Okay, so we will be starting now. So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today for this first episode of our customer talks. So today we are welcoming Nestlé. Before we start, I'm going to talk a bit of practical things regarding this webinar. So first, what you need to know is that the webinar will be recorded. So you will all receive in a couple of days a link to the replay if you want to watch it again or share it with other people. Also that all participants are on mute for sound quality reasons, but you will all be able to ask questions via the chat panel. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate throughout the webinar to ask them. And there will be a full 15-minute session at the end of this webinar to take all the questions. So we will wait until the end to address them. So please stay with us for the entire time. This will be an interesting Q&A session with German and Gael. So that's it for the practical details. I will leave the floor to Gael and German.
Thank you so much, Alice. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this first webinar of a new series that we are launching this year. So we are very, very proud and pleased to have you on board. So my name is Gaëlle Bou. I am Chief Revenue Officer and working at Sistron for more than 5 years now. So with this webinar, with this customer talk series, we wanted to give the floor to our customers and partners to share with you their experience around machine translation. We wanted to highlight what challenges has machine translation addressed, how was the project built, what were the keys to its success, and what are the benefits. So for this first session, I am very pleased to welcome German Basterra, Translation Manager at Nestlé. Hello, German, and welcome.
Good morning. Hello, everybody.
So thank you for accepting our invitation and sharing with the participants of some of your expertise and experience around machine translation. So before getting to the heart of the subject, can you please introduce Nestlé Group in a few words?
Yes, I mean, as you know, Nestlé is the largest food company, nutrition in the world. Has over 150 years history, and basically covers all kinds of areas from baby food started traditionally there, but then chocolate, coffee, pet food, drinks, and so on and so forth. Brands, many famous ones I just mentioned: Nespresso, Kit Kat, Maggi, Nesquik, Purina. They are all some of the global brands, and we have also in the different markets local brands that are maybe not known worldwide but popular there. And maybe one thing I want to say is that Nestlé currently has an important focus on kind of environmental issues. Of course, it's a big concern. There is a campaign now to reduce the emissions in agriculture because the raw materials come from there. Also to make packaging more sustainable, less plastic, more recycling. And right now, as you can see on the screen, there's also big emphasis on a kind of plant-based nutrition. So this is just a kind of very short overview. If you want some key figures, Nestlé has over 300,000 employees. How many exactly we don't know, because things are kind of changing, buying and selling companies all the time. But there are around 450 factories all over the place. It operates in basically 200 countries. It's like the UN, whether it has a factory there or a distribution center. So Nestlé has a global footprint, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, thank you. And can you explain your role in the company?
Yes, I've been working in Nestlé for 10, 20 years now, working on kind of IT department. Started with a huge SAP rollout that we had many years ago, already involved in the translation there of the system, training materials, and then my role developed into basically translation management. I was leading our competence center for Europe here in Frankfurt. And right now I'm kind of more in the IT side as tech lead for translation services.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for this introduction. And of course, we can imagine with these figures you mentioned on the operation, the countries where the footprint you have, we can imagine that linguistic services are important, but could you explain to the audience why it's so important and for what kind of usage?
Yes, obviously with such a big, huge global company, you can imagine that language, plays a role in communication. I think there are different dimensions, and I just mentioned briefly a few of them. One is the consumer dimension, where obviously, you're selling products, you need to put descriptions, in the package. You have websites. Often they are not just for one market, but for a whole region or the whole world. Then they have to be multilingual. So that is the kind of communication with the customers, right? Very crucial. Then there is the communication with the employees, right? So we also have a lot of material, let's say from HR, training material, that maybe is produced centrally, perhaps in Switzerland, but needs to be, communicated throughout the world, or people in different markets need to take a course. And then obviously not everybody speaks English, right? So you just need to translate for internal communications. Then there's a kind of dimension of kind of business communication that can be either between the center and the markets, because the information from the markets is in the local language, and in the center typically writes in English, which is the corporate language, but also communication with suppliers. So there's also a need for translation, because there's so many languages. Between markets, they exchange products with each other in their supply chain. So this is another dimension. Maybe just briefly, one that kind of has emerged as a business case lately is indeed the global business services, right? You can see like many companies now, they try to consolidate many operations in some countries that serve the whole world. For instance, we have a center in Manila that serves, different Asian countries. We have a center in the Ukraine that serves European countries, in Brazil, Latin America, and North America. So you can see that in these centers, they're doing operations. It could be they're paying, I don't know, they're paying invoices, or they're doing some data for the company, POs, requests, all kinds of stuff, and they get information from many different countries in many different languages, and then they have to manage that. So those are some of the dimensions where multilingual communication.
It's very clear. Yeah, of course, there are many, and many cases where yes, translation is needed, and I would say good translation, good quality, and in real time sometimes. Okay, and so how did you manage translation at first? So before launching the project, MT project, and what were your workflow at that time?
Okay, so basically translation was managed, through traditional means, right? Basically through people, either translators or native language speakers, and that was done very kind of decentralized regionally in general, right? Because I was talking about different needs. So basically in each market you will have some people. Sometimes it was a small translation department, very often was informally like a secretary of a department who knew English and basically was translating. That is earlier, if you studied, let's say to become a secretary, you basically study languages, right? And translation. Yeah, we use agencies for translating content.
Sorry. go ahead.
Yeah, so basically a little bit at a local level through local resources, outsourcing to companies, but obviously that costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time, basically.
Yes, I can imagine. It was my question. What was the limitation? So of course you can't do everything, and the time was
slow. Yeah,
both slow,
exactly.
and the cost, of course, important. Okay, great. So so I think it's one of the reasons why you launched the MT project. But can you explain to the audience the main reasons of launching this project?
Yes, so I described the needs. There was a situation around 2 years ago, more or less, where we had from the IT, because obviously we cannot manage this kind of request, right? We had the request from different areas which kind of pointed into this direction, right? On the one hand, there was the legal department that had concerns about confidentiality, because you can imagine so many contracts, um, discussions, kind of confidential discussions about mergers, acquisitions, auditing, you know, and how do you manage that, right? And they were obviously concerned using some of the free internet tools because the confidentiality, privacy. So that was one big area. And then the business services also came to us concretely from Manila, where indeed, you know, they're managing Vietnamese, Japanese, Indonesian, Thai, whatever, you know, and they just needed a native language speakers to manage that. And it's kind of difficult, costly to get people from all of these countries go to the Philippines to live, to recruit them. And they just wanted, you know, a kind of faster workflow to manage with translation. And finally, we just had also from the HR function and from other areas, somehow the need to be able to translate more and cheaper, you know, for volume documentation. For instance, training is the kind of stuff maybe for marketing you are willing to pay for an agency, right? But training, which is internal, I wouldn't say that you don't need the same high quality, but it's a different standard because you are not publishing, you're not sending out to the customers, it's kind of internal. So maybe the idea was, can we use machine translation with some post editing to, you know, create good quality internal material? So there were different functions that more or less at the same time came with this demand, and that's basically how, you know, one of the reasons why we were obviously looking into that already, but that cannot kick off the project.
And why at that time? So it's because you saw that perhaps the technology makes some progress. Why you decided to launch it? So I understand very well the reason, the needs, the pains you wanted to cover, but why at that moment?
Okay, as I said, there were differences. For instance, the European, you know, confidentiality, privacy, the famous GDPR came. Obviously,
So more pressure on the confidentiality.
Yeah, exactly. Legal, but also HR. You know, we sent, you know, maybe even the I don't know, a CV of an employee or some kind of employee letter, you know, you need to translate, but it needs to be kind of confidentially done, you know, you have to respect privacy. So that was kind of an important, you know, factor, the increasing awareness and need of privacy, confidentiality, security of translation. As I said, the other one was kind of the business services and the need to basically address the fully multilingual demands in a more cost-efficient way, and simply the fact that machine translation has been getting increasingly better. And
Yeah,
then when earlier people said, "Oh, you know, it's okay, Google, okay, but it's not really good enough." But then we thought maybe we can use that for kind of real translation, you know. So several things kind of came together like a couple of years.
Yes, it's a combination of of several factors that that lead you to say, okay, it's a good time to launch this this project. Okay, good. And so when you build the project, what was the major scenarios you imagined and the use case you wanted to cover?
Okay, so obviously there's many things you can do, but let's say simply two basic things, right? So the one is kind of like the fast and more or less accurate document translation. you have like legal department has a contract from a foreign country, and they just need to at least understand what it is about in a confidential way, right? So that kind of a quick file translation. The same thing from the business services, where they receive all of these documents from the countries to be processed, and they just need to understand at least, what's basically it's all about. There is not only a translation problem, sometimes they get kind of fax or scanned documents, so you even need an optical character recognition software that kind of processes the PDFs, and I think Systram was also able to deliver that functionality, so that's something that we looked at. So those were two of the major concrete things that we examined. And the third one was the connection with our translation management system, so the integration with our, let's say, more not traditional but kind of more normal translation tools that we could
accelerate, to
integrate.
optimize the productivity on that side.
Exactly. So we're using XTM, and Systram has a very good integration with XTM, so that kind of helps a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. And so when you decide to launch this project with these priorities and major scenarios, what were your main selection criteria for this solution? When you look at the market and you say, okay, for us, the main key points we want to cover are.
Yes, of course, security is there number one. There was indeed both from the legal department auditing, but also from the MBS. They do a lot of kind of HR documentation, so we have to have a system. Actually, we have a system in a private cloud, so we know it is secure, compliant. Nobody is looking at it. I don't even know what people are translating. I cannot. I don't know. I cannot find out, even as an administrator, so there's a certain, level of trust there that information is really confidential. The accuracy obviously is important. We cannot compare. There's obviously some good engines in the market. Overall, we found Systram to have like a high quality, and obviously maybe that for one particular language, maybe, I don't know, Google or engine X is maybe, say, better, but I mean, overall, we've just found in the comparisons that we did, a good quality. The user friendliness.
The customization, perhaps the fact you can customize the quality compared to the raw generic translation.
Of course. That's also another thing, that with Systram is kind of easy to, for instance, incorporate dictionaries to improve the quality, to train the engine. That's what in many ways is it's a user-friendly solution, and not only from the end user, so from the customization point of view, right? From the end user is, I would say, user-friendly. You can access Systram in different ways. One way is simply through a web interface, a little bit like Google, but there's also like Office plugins, which are actually quite popular because you can access directly from Word or from Outlook or other programs. Get the translation directly. So it's kind of user-friendly, right? And then another point that we looked at, I mentioned earlier, is the integration with other systems, particularly with our XTM system.
So to be open and to have connection capabilities also, it was important for you. Okay, great. Okay, and so when we understand very well the context, the reason why you launched the project, the main criteria you had, and so because it's interesting to see about the timeline. I think also how you manage the timeline of the project, the different steps.
Okay, so obviously that took some time to go through everything. We first launched an RFP where we invited, I don't know, around half a dozen major names,
Yes.
engines, and we kind of look at them according to the criteria I mentioned. We made like a scoreboard, and I mean overall we found in general the System was kind of more appropriate for our needs, right? So that was the first step. But then we just didn't go and, so then we did a pilot, right? Where we spent over a month with our colleagues in MBS, basically looking at the quality of their specific languages, the results for their specific documents. As I said, they had many scanned PDFs where the quality wasn't that good, and to make sure that they were processed. We look at throughput rates, so they send several million words, in half an hour, that that it works kind of quickly because we have a lot of volume, of course. And yeah, a little bit like the usability, the accuracy. So they kind of, I mean, we supported them and they basically evaluated the results and they were kind of satisfied. So that was our kind of pilot.
Yeah.
And then, yes.
Yeah, it was for you. It was a real pilot. So you test everything. You really try to see all the aspects you wanted to validate.
Yes, because I mean, we obviously what we don't want to do is to buy a product on the basis of a PowerPoint, right? Because
Of
PowerPoints
course.
are all very nice, but then you realize, I mean, when you are actually, so it was a real life, it was a real life use, where people, I mean, we found a couple of problems that then were addressed, right? But we found the real things that happen when you are using the product. And that's why after the pilot was successful, then the actual implementation was relatively smooth, because basically we had already tested everything, right?
Yeah, of course. So it's
So
very,
pilot
very
was very important.
important.
So yes.
Okay, and after the pilot?
After the pilot, we went live, and then we rolled it out to several areas. That was a little bit tricky because we are, of course, if you buy a software for the whole company, it's kind of easy to say, okay, everybody can use it, right? But we are such a large company that we got quite a few, several thousand licenses, right? But we don't have license for everybody. So it was more a point of, we can give it to some functions, for instance, our legal, our business services, other people, but that was kind of a little bit tricky how to give it to somebody but not to somebody else, right, so to speak. Or also we didn't want to just give it to everybody, but kind of go through a kind of step-by-step implementation to
and so there is some change management to do. You have to really to see step by step, and as you said, to really manage that inside the company. It's not just I have a tool, it's also to manage the change.
Exactly, because also the needs, they may be different, right? Like for instance, legal, they just want a quick translation, confidential, that's basically it, right? But maybe other guys, they need something else or some very specific stuff. So that's why we wanted to go an approach where we address specific functions. We're confident with that. We find out
approach, really
issues.
tailored.
Yeah.
Tailored
And then,
to the needs.
continue expanding.
Of course. I think it's a very good way to do. And also because I imagine you can also address the different needs by the different profile you can build in Systrans to decide to say, okay, you need this kind of terminology, and so to fine tune really the tool compared to the usage. Okay, great, very clear. And perhaps it's interesting also to understand who were the different stakeholders in this project, because I think you were not the only one. And so
yes.
who were with you on that project, and who take part on the decision and the success of the project?
Yeah, so I mentioned already, and you put it there in the slide. So on the one, there are the global business services, and there are the legal department, who obviously supported that and they wanted that themselves, right? Then the translation team, by that I mean the people who are kind of translating documents, and obviously they use the tool, and obviously my IT function, right?
Yeah. Of course. Okay, great. And so now it could be interesting also, of course, now to see at how was the solution adopted by the different users, and what were the first results, even if the project is not fully perhaps achieved, but to understand where you are and what are the first feedbacks.
Yes, obviously the adoption has been good. Basically, give access to people, and we're monitoring through statistics what is the use. We know how many million words are translated per month, in which languages. So that's quite good. Concrete benefits. Well, the business services, basically they save some money because they have not eliminated, but they have reduced the need. If they earlier need, I don't know, 10 Japanese speakers, now they can do with 2, I mean, you always need some, native language person,
Yeah, of
right?
course.
So, and obviously, let me put it this way, it's just cheaper to hire local people than to bring somebody from abroad, right? Maybe from another a more expensive country. Also, the whole recruitment process is much easier, right? So that is a very clear and benefit that you can actually count in money, right? From the legal perspective, it's more like an increase in compliance, right? Because now the documents, they're not translated in ways that are maybe a little bit dangerous, but they're translated in a safe, compliant way. So I think this is also a benefit, right? And in other areas, what we have seen is that either we have saved some money, or maybe content that probably would not have been translated and
I can
provided
imagine.
to users, because we have so much stuff, particularly in the training area. There's a whole team involved in managing kind of training projects that probably would have been done locally, and now it's done kind of centrally, somehow managed, or probably wouldn't have been done because people wouldn't have the money, the time, and now we're able to deliver much more content in a very cost-efficient way. So I think those are kind of the benefits that we can see already.
Yeah, very clear, very clear. Yes, it's also open new possibilities. So it's optimizing what you did before, but it's also open new capabilities that you didn't do before, because as you said, because no time, no resources, and so on. So okay, great, very interesting. And when you said you have statistics, how are you able to follow the usage of the solution? Can you explain how you do that?
Yes, so that's one of the things behind the hood, right? That the end user, of course, don't see, but we, like me as administrator, then I can kind of look inside, not into what people are doing, and that I don't know, but I know how many words they are sending for translation, into which languages, from which area. So actually, you can basically say, oh, we're translating a lot into Indonesian. Why? And why so much into Indonesia, but also into Malaysia? Maybe we can promote that into the Malaysian market, or we can even see user profiles, or we can see, something kind of failed here. Why did it happen? Happened rarely, but so we can really investigate into usage. I'm not sure you can do that with other engines where you basically just kind of send stuff. So we can actually analyze very, very well the usage. We get the statistics from system, and of course we analyze that through our tool. So a system basically gives you the raw data you need to make it speak, right?
Yeah, of course. Okay, great. Thank you. And perhaps to before we ask the question of the audience, perhaps you you could, no, sorry, before that, I forgot one important point is the future. So what will be the next steps in your machine translation project after this first step?
Well, I think we have gathered quite a bit of experience about the tool capabilities, how people are using it. And I think we need to go into basically into two directions. One is to really open up for more users, even to the whole company, you know, because I mean the benefits are there. So why should we limit to a few thousand people? So we're going to continue expanding the usage, opening up, promoting, you know, enabling. And that is one thing, to basically increase the number of users. That is, you know, kind of in a sense easier. You just kind of need to give them more access. And the other one is to address or kind of improve the quality. And of course, the quality of the machine translation, I think Sistran are already doing things to continually improve, you know, better engine, larger engines. But there's also something we can do on our side. I think I mentioned dictionaries. There's the possibility of training engine. Of course, that is all, you know, takes some effort. So, and that's going to be our next step, to kind of work in those two areas.
Yeah, because the beauty of AI and neural translation is that we can train the engine. So we have many ways. So we can do the training for the customers, but we also have now, and we will talk about that in another webinar. We have a new tool that allows also you to train yourself your own models. So yes, there is many ways to improve and improve again the translation, and to improve and to make this really fit your terminology, your needs, your tone of voice. So it's really something that we want to. It's our DNA, you know, to really to offer customized translation, not generic. It's not our goal. The goal is to you have your own machine translation. It's Nestlé machine translation tool, and not everyone. Okay, great. So thank you for that. And yes, for the last point I wanted to ask you before the question, it was perhaps to give an advice, if you have some, to the audience, because if they want themselves to launch a machine translation project, what would be your main advice?
Very briefly, so I said, try to identify, not say, oh, machine translation is great. So try to identify concretely use cases, like I mentioned, legal or this and that. And then another thing would be kind of to set the expectations, in the sense that they are not kind of immense, like, oh, then, you know, we get Systram or whatever, and then we don't need translators or translation anymore. Because obviously there is a need to continue working on this area, but also to be able to be ready to manage expectations, because sometimes people they may say, oh, you know, this is not, maybe they expect that, again, it's going to be everything perfect, right? But then obviously we know machine translation is good, it's very useful, but it's not, you know, perfect. So to be able to manage that, and I mean, I could talk about that for an hour. So
Of course, I can imagine. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all this you shared with the audience. I think it's really great. So now I see that I have some questions for you, and so we will go through the questions of the audience, because of course the idea is also to be very interactive and to try to interact, yes, with the audience. So first question I can see, let me see up. Okay, so hi, it's Tim from SafeCall. We run with blowing lines around the world, and we are looking for okay, if I don't see the entire, I see here. And we are looking for two integration. One is auto translation of documents reporters send us, and the second would be a real-time translation of a web chat function. Okay, but I don't see really the question here. Let's see.
I think that question Sistram can answer quite well, but I think it's probably possible to do both things. Yeah.
Yeah.
The second part of the question is in another question I just sent you.
Okay, so could you tell this, Alex? If you see the question, tell to the audience, please.
Yes, so the second part is one is auto translation of documents reporters send us, and the second will be a real-time translation of a web chat function.
Yes, I told that, but I don't see the question. So it's the usage, okay? So perhaps the question is to say that yes, of course we can do this auto translation of documents and real-time translation of a web chat. Perhaps the question is, do we do that? So yes, of course, we can integrate translation in chat in Teams, for example, and also we have the auto detect function that could be interesting. When you don't know the language of the document, it will be auto detect, and then you can translate in the language you want. So Teams, sorry, I hope it's answered your question. If not, of course, we will take the time then to contact you and give you all the information you need. I have a question from Antonio. I have some question. When you say XTM, do you mean CAT tool? Yes, we mean CAT tool, German, right? Or TMS.
Yes,
I don't know if you can say
exactly.
CAT.
Where XTM is more than a CAT tool. XTM is a translation management system which has a CAT tool. So yes, but it's basically the integration of machine translation with the kind of tools that professional translators, and translation managers use to process their work. So that's what I meant.
Yeah, absolutely. And does everybody at Nestlé has access to the MT tool? I think not yet, but could you perhaps recap how many people? And you said it was some main functional departments, but
yes, I think we have currently around 2,000 people in the system.
Okay.
But I said we're going to expand that.
Yeah. So the idea is to expand, but as you explained, it's better to begin step by step.
Step by step. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We have many customers that do that. So they first focus on some very concrete use case, the main one, the priority one, and then they extend to all employees. Yes, and we can do that very easily, as you said, so it's okay. Steen asked, are there any text or content areas where you do not use the MT solution?
Yes, of course. As I say, we kind of focus that on, contracts, more like formal business documents. We do kind of marketing translation, and for there, basically, I mean, like there's agencies that are specialized on the content, and it kind of makes more sense, for marketing, transcreation. Obviously, machine translation is good for more technical documents, more business documents, but obviously for marketing, it might sound kind of funny, sometimes. So yeah, we don't use machine translation for marketing, for instance.
Okay, Asa also asked, do you also have some kind of portal for co-workers at Nestlé to use for their ad hoc needs, or of easily get an understanding of texts in foreign languages? So it could be a translation portal. We have some customers that do that. Perhaps not yet, I think.
I mean, we don't have in that sense. That's what we are trying to do now.
Yeah. So it's
but system kind of for those who with access fulfills that need, but we don't have it kind of open for everybody.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's
everybody.
what we want to do.
Yeah, we do that for many customers. For example, we have some in automotive, we have big customers that did that. So they open a portal for everybody, and each employees have this access. They don't know that it is Sistron, by the way, because it's really integrated in their portal of the company with the brand of the company and so on. And they just go there. They know that it's the official translation tool shared by everybody. So of course, the beauty of the thing is that you share all the terminology and so on. So when you use it, it's always better in terms of quality and so on. So yes, definitely something we can do. Muhammad asked, hi German, how much do you still rely on freelancers, or all of your translation is done in-house?
Okay, it's difficult to answer because we're such a big company and I don't control like what everybody does throughout the whole world. But I would say, yes, I would say we for one thing, we don't work with freelancers very much. We typically work with agencies. And I would say that most things are being outsourced. Actually, most of the translation work is being outsourced.
Okay, and there is several questions around training machine translation. So the specialization of the engine. People want to know if you already trained some engine or not yet, and it will be the next step. Do you use only generic for now, and or did you already use specialized engines?
We do use specialized engines, but with a simple specialization, basically using dictionaries. We also uploaded a few memories. So we have done some customizing, but the real machine training, we've been waiting for the new feature that you just mentioned earlier, because obviously earlier wasn't so easy to do, and I think now we have a kind of more, say, an easier way of training. So we haven't trained the engines that way yet, but we're hoping to do that next.
Okay, perfect. Yes, just to clarify this point, so we have two ways to train an engine. So, okay, what you mentioned with dictionaries and so on, it's customization. It's a first way of customized translation, but it's internal on the solution. So you have it it's a feature of the pure neural server. And then you have the other way is to retrain the engine, to specialize the engine itself. So for now, until now, it was a service, professional service we do for our customers. So the customer give us the data and we train the engine with the data. And now we launch a tool that allows our customer to do it by themselves. So it's two ways to do it. And we will be pleased to assist, to support you in this next step. Okay. I see there is other. Laura asked, hi German, very interesting presentation. Can I ask if you have any data on how many users you currently have on the system? So yes. And what is your daily volume of translation? Did you face any issues connected with the amount of users on the system, considering the size of your company? Thanks.
Yes, I mean, we have actually in the Sistran engine, in the admin panel, you can see on real time what people are actually translating every minute, so to speak, right? So you can see, you can analyze that. We haven't had problems with the volume. We did some in the pilot. We did some stress test. I think I sent like 20 million words, like boom, see what happens. And obviously it took some time, but it didn't crash, because I think it's done in a way that they're kind of broken up into a small request, and it just took some hours to do everything. I don't know how long it took, but we haven't had problems like things crashing. Normally translations are done in 1 or 2 minutes. For documents, for text, is real time, because the system divides between synchronous and asynchronous, and for text it's kind of immediately, and for a big document, you have to go to the queue, right? But we haven't had problems like you have to wait like for hours or anything like that. So we've been okay there.
Great. Perhaps I will try to take one or two more questions. There are many questions, so I won't be able to do everything today, but we will of course answer after the webinar all the questions, but perhaps one or two more. So yes, I think yes, it's interesting there. So how did you educate general users on usage of MT and related expectation and risks?
I don't think I can answer in a minute, but as I mentioned, usually we get that through our post editors where we have a more direct connection. And sometimes we have feedback from users from different functions where they say, you know, maybe either they give positive feedback or sometimes negative, like this didn't work, whatever. And then we just address that. And the feedback can be, you can have, for the same thing, you can sometimes have very different feedback. Some people saying, oh, it's really good, I'm very happy. And some people say, you know, so I mean, there's certain element of subjectivity. How do you educate? I mean, it's a continuous process that you need to go through, and it's important.
Yeah, of course.
But I'm sorry, I cannot answer in a minute.
No,
we need to do another webinar for that.
Yeah. Okay, and I think one question of Mariusz is to know, is this tool only one option for translation in Nestlé, or your employees can still translate via free online tools, or did you stop the access?
We didn't quite cut it off. There's been discussions about that, but the idea is not to forbid, I mean, but simply to say you have a better alternative here, which is you know, available and confidential, right? It would be also difficult to cut off a particular link, or you know, but you know, we considered that, but we didn't go so far.
Yeah, you prefer to convince.
And also, not everybody has access to Systrand, so you know, if we cut for everybody, then so when everybody would have access to the tool, then
of course
something you can
the condition is everybody has access. If not, if you don't provide an alternative, it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course. Perhaps the last one, and we will end this webinar. Yeah, so Marta asked this question. So hi German, thanks for the great presentation, very high level here. Are translation costs MT to human workflows carried by charge to the users or covered by a centrally allocated translation budget?
They are covered by a centrally allocated budget. We consider that, of course, to charge per user, you know, maybe you charge them 50 cents or something, it's just too complicated, right? So we thought about charging back maybe to departments and so on. In the end, it's just too complicated, so we just do it centrally. So we don't charge back per usage.
Very clear. And there is a question for me, so I take it. So is there the chance after a machine translation to order a professional translation via Systrand, which can be used for publication? So no, Sonja, but what we do is we are very focused on machine translation at Systrand. We are really dedicated to that, but we have many partners. And so we work with many LSPs, and so we are able to really have a bundle offer with the machine translation and a partner if you need to do the post edition and so on. So we did that many times, so it's not a problem for us. And the last one for you, Jeman, and we will end. Does Nestlé use different TMs? So one for marketing, one for legal, etc.
Yes.
Of course, the beauty of the thing is to have different linguistic resources and to adapt to the different users. And then with Systrand, you will have access to different profile of translation to really fit with the need and and I would say the terminology, of course, you use. Okay, great, Chairman. I think it was a great success. So many questions, so many people attend the webinar this morning. So thanks all for your participation. It's really, we are very happy because it's, as I said, it's the first one of, I hope, a long series. So we are very happy to see that it works. And German, again, thank you so much for your time, because and to share your experience. It's very, very something that is very important for everybody to hear about real experience, and not just, as you said, not just PowerPoint or marketing stuff. So thank you for that again. And Alice, I let you perhaps conclude and end the webinar. Thank you.
And wrap up. So thanks everybody for connecting with us. Thank you, German and Gael, for this very interesting session. And if you have any questions for us or German, please get in touch with us. The question that has not been addressed, we will get back to you individually. And have a great day, all. Bye-bye.
And perhaps just, Alice, to mention that if you need to contact us by email, you have it on the slides. So contact at very simple, contact@sistrongroup.com. Sorry.
Yes. And we will.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.